Hey, this is Jeff of SimSamurai.net. This is part 3 of a video tutorial on cutting the exterior skin for any of my Sim Cockpit designs. Basically what you see here is my floor cutting platform that I've made out of 4x4 posts, and I've got my saw here ready to go. I'm going to use my rigid cordless skill saw for this project just because this is thin material and easy to cut through. Basically in part 1 I discussed that you could use 2x4s for a cutting platform, but I didn't really recommend that, especially using a single 2x4, simply because using a single 2x4 doesn't really allow you to properly clamp your material, be it fiberboard or plywood. You'll find that if you used a single 2x4 for your floor cutting style platform, that the bottom of your clamp is going to want to rub up against the ground, and it's not going to have enough vertical height to get up underneath your cutting material or the material that you're cutting. So another option, if you don't want to use 4x4 posts, you could actually screw two pieces of 2x4 together. This will give you a 3-inch distance, and you could use that, but that too is actually going to be a little bit less than a 4x4 post, which is, I believe, actually like 3.5 by 3.5. But if you do double up to two pieces of 2x4, I was talking about driving screws into this to marry two pieces together. And if you do that, you're going to want to recess the screws, so pre-drill a hole first, and then actually drill a bigger hole. That's the diameter of the screw head. Recess that down about a 1/2 inch, and then drive in your screw to marry the two pieces together. And why this is particularly important is because if you're using a skill saw, you want to make sure that you set your saw blade at the depth of the material that you're going to cut. In this case, I'm cutting two pieces of 1/8 inch, so a combined distance of or height of 1/4 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and set my saw now to that distance. I'm going to eyeball it from the rear. I'm going to set it actually at about 3/8 because you want to go a little past the distance that you cut. And so that looks good right there. And I'm going to tighten that back up. And then lastly, you just want to check it. Hold your fence up, and then just make sure that the tooth of the blade is penetrating down through the material. And that's actually a little too less. And so I'm going to loosen that, and then I'm going to drop it down a little further, and that's good. You just want so your teeth protrude the bottom. Now you don't want to do too much, obviously, because as you cut on your cutting platforms, eventually you're going to be having to cut over your pieces of your platform material, and be it doubled up 2x4 or 4x4 posts. So actually at some point your blade is actually going to cut some grooves, as you can see there. Will actually wind up cutting your floor supports. So once you use these or make these, you will always want to keep these in your garage somewhere. Use them anytime you need to cut a sheet of plywood. I have had these for a long time. You're going to get kerf marks from your saw in it, and basically that's just how it is what you want to use this for, and you will always continue to use these pieces for your cutting platform. But it's important that you set your saw to the proper depth, because if you had it set too deep, it would tend to bind or really slow down when you hit your floor platform material. And you don't want that to happen, because you want to make a nice, smooth, even cut at pretty much a continuous speed. So setting your blade depth is extremely important for this type of cutting. So basically I'll just make the first cut here, and I could go ahead and set up my rip fence, as you can see here. Using some extra clamps. Obviously you can see the clamps I'm using right now I have set in place to hold my fiberboard material actually together. But if I had extra clamps on hand, I could measure my fence, fence to fence or rip fence distance to make sure that I'm cutting on the right side of my line, as you can see right there, to cut this piece out. But I'm pretty good at freehand cutting. I'm a skilled carpenter, so I'm actually just going to cut this freehand using my little 6.5 inch rigid skill saw. So we will set aside my rip fence for now, and I'll just make this first cut. And then basically, you're just going to want to do the same thing. Obviously, you could use the rip fence with clamps if you want. Measure out your fence to fence distance properly, cut on the outside edge of your line, and clamp this down on either side, and then you do it there and there and there, and so on, around and so on your piece of fiberboard here to cut out your exterior skin panels. But if you feel confident of your freehand abilities, just make sure you go really slow. Pay attention to where your blade is meeting your line, and then just cut slowly and carefully like I'm going to do right now. So you always want to get your saw up to rotational speed first before you start penetrating the material, and then make your cut. And I usually wear work gloves when I do this and some goggles because you don't want to breathe this stuff. It's kind of like MDF, fiberboard. It's got some chemicals in it, so you should wear a dust mask, and you should always wear safety goggles. But I'm not right now, because I'm just going to make a quick demonstration cut just to show you how this is done. And that's it. And as you can see, for a freehand cut, that's pretty accurate, pretty straight. Once I get this all cut out, I'll take some 120 or 180 grit sandpaper and lightly sand the edges of each piece just to get the rough edges off. And then in the next video, we will make the drill holes for where your screws will go to attach the skin pieces to the wall frames. That's it from simsamurai.net. We'll check you in the next video. Thanks.